My name is Osei-Frimpong, and I'm here to help you not squander your life, lest you be confused about the opportunities before you in this wide world. So this all started for me a few weeks ago when my kids were running at the state championships. And for the record, my oldest is a state champion in the 2 mile. My middle is a state champion and state record holder in the 2 mile. And my youngest was like 0.2 seconds away from winning the 800. And that's like a 2-lap race in like 0.2 seconds. It was a very close race, but both kids smashed the state record for the 800, for the 8U 800. And so it was a very successful state championships. So what we did to commemorate our successful outing together, we went and got t-shirts and sweatshirts. And it was it was an interesting experience because they pressed the sweatshirts right there. So I learned about and I asked some probing questions about hold on, wait a minute. You can just press these shirts right here. And there's a process called DTF, direct to film, where you get the prints from the film and then they press the print on the shirt for you at the time. So you can make custom shirts pretty easy, custom apparel pretty easy now. And I was asking them all these questions because I saw the line behind me was also waiting for their state championship shirts, because it's a bit like an airport where they get you in a place and you're in a good mood, and so you just spend all the money you can on swag so they can charge you airport prices. So we ended up paying a lot of money for t-shirts and sweatshirts to commemorate our state championships and the fact that we were at the meet and did well at the meet. And my oldest daughter was funny. It was like, it's nice that they didn't tell you the prices before you paid, so you're already pot committed by the time you paid. So we were talking about it on the way home, and I was like, well, why don't we start a t-shirt business? And I figured it was better than a lemonade stand for the kids, and we could talk about margins, and I could tell them about business, and they could get practical skills on how to start a business and all of that stuff. And so we decided, between the drive from McDonough, Georgia to Athens, Georgia, that we were going to start a t-shirt business. And so, since I'm the kind of guy who follows through on these kinds of things, we were up and running. The t-shirt business was up and running. And so we did it. And we are doing it. And it's a funny thing, starting an apparel business in 2025. First of all, you got these DTF machines, or the process. So you got the process. That makes it easy. But also, if you branch online, it gets more interesting, because e-commerce is a fascinating wild west of opportunities, because for a few reasons. One of them has to do with AI, 2 has to do with distribution change, and the 3 has to do with print on demand. On demand products make this a really fascinating ability, because you don't have to hold inventory in your place. A few years ago, even with the drop shipping craze, you had to actually buy stuff and hold it here. Now we're pretty much, you can be an e-commerce marketer where you just sell things and then point them to a Shopify site, and it makes them on demand, and you kind of sell it because you buy it from the wholesaler, but the wholesalers now make themselves market themselves to things like Shopify. So it's not that hard to find a wholesaler now, because everyone can market themselves rather easily. Wholesalers can market themselves, and then retailers can market themselves to wholesalers, and everything's just kind of a little bit more fluid than it was, I don't know, even 10 years ago. So the on-demand discourse, the fact that I don't have to have stacks and stacks and stacks of t-shirts here in order to sell t-shirts online, makes me an Amazon in waiting in a way. So now I'm in the apparel business, kind of as a side hustle. But it's actually fascinating, because it gets even more interesting. So now I'm online and, I have a Shopify store, but even in advertisements, because technology is such that we've been video conferencing ever since at least COVID-19, but people have been used to dealing with people online and strictly online. Even advertisements don't have to be with people. If I were launching this show again, and I wanted to do it as a hot 19-year-old white chick, I think I could, because of the AI avatars that exist And that technology, I think I could do it at a good price. And so you'd get my wisdom, except, out of someone who looks like, I don't know, who's the newest white girl. And that would be amusing, I think. And you just have to understand that we've been groomed to a quality of video interface and video interface and video interactions. And so many of those interactions have come through filters, because chicks use filters apparently in their social media interactions. And so many of those interactions have come through filters, and some of the filters have been aggressive, that we've been pretty much been normalizing a quality of digital presence that, even though AI doesn't look like people necessarily, it looks like a person who's been run through an AI filter. And so they now have 100% AIs that look like filtered people. The AIs are actually, they're pretty good. So these AI avatars, the AI actors, they look like people. They look like what we're used to looking at people through screens looking like. Right? And now they talk and walk and they can move. And like I said, with artificial intelligence, like capturing our mannerisms, they do a pretty good job. And you can see these kind of little videos of, say, a baby going over a Dave Chappelle routine and doing it with all the mannerisms of Dave Chappelle, except, so he looks like he's like 7 months old. So all of these things are actually possible in this wild west of possible catfishing. So if I were like 21 years old and I worked a ton of jobs, I worked job after job after job after job. I worked a zillion jobs when I was that age. Because, authority and it's just tricky. What I would do instead is I would 100% become an e-commerce guy and just do it for life. Because it's not that it's easy, but the algorithms and the mechanisms are here for like independent people with a camera, and not a lot of capital to actually get in the e-commerce game. Like, I can sell my apparel. By the way, if you appreciate what I'm doing, and I think you should appreciate what I'm doing just in general with this show, not necessarily the apparel line, Another Chance Productions, I think you need to go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll keep giving you a quality of wisdom that maybe you don't get everywhere else. But the e-commerce game, I think it's real. Like, you can design apparel, you can design products now and sell them in a way that you just couldn't on demand before. And if you can't do it on demand, that means you're holding a bunch of inventory, and that's sunk costs, right? So you get to do all of this without the threat of such overwhelming sunk costs and like having to cart around inventory in the way that you used to. And I think this is new. I think the print on demand aspect of the world and our access to wholesalers and marketers through social media is new. So it's kind of like being a brand ambassador or influencer, but you actually get to stand by your products. You make it yourself. So there's a way in which I've become a general contractor of the self. They call it an entrepreneur of the self. I call it, I'm more of a general contractor because I make a product that's not me. I make a product that's not me, that's other products, but I get it from like organizing the wholesalers and then sell it, and I don't actually have to like hold it myself. So I'm kind of like a general contractor insofar as I coordinate the other contractors. I don't do a lot of work, but I coordinate them and sell them. And it's not like I'm an entrepreneur of the self insofar as I'm not selling myself. I'm selling a product that's alienable from me. My brand is even irrelevant. It's Another Chance Productions. But what is relevant is the product that I can make through, not actual like buying hard tools. So I have the t-shirt business insofar as I have a press and I have access to transfers and all of that stuff. But I'm also building the online business, which I think might be more lucrative as a kind of side hustle where, I don't really have control any of the I don't really have to hold any of the inventory. Like the t-shirts made by the companies, by someone else who's organizing a series of companies. My manufacturers are in the US, on demand, right? So all I have to do is design it. But also market research is such that it's not that hard to figure out what a winning shirt looks like and then make it a little bit better with AI, right? So you find a winning shirt, you make it better with AI, and then you market it yourself and just in a different way. And there, voila. So you don't have to make things whole cloth. You just make them better than what's already winning. So the trick of finding something that was winning was already a problem before, but it's not so much now because, there are ways. Anyway, so there are entrepreneurial hacks to get through life that weren't available and they depend on kind of a smart and decision making and a quality of risk, but they don't depend on that much capital. And you don't have to have the trust of other people in the same way that you had to have before. Like I don't need other people. Yeah, I don't need to talk to other people to get them to buy my stuff in the same way that a generation ago you needed to talk to other people to get them to buy your stuff. That's just not true. And it's kind of a fascinating time if I were young and I didn't want to go the corporate route. Well, I was never gonna make it in the corporate route, right? And then there's the idea that like, well, you can make it in academia, but academia is a little bit tricky too, because if you're not the right kind of feminist, you're always on the verge of getting kicked out by the feminists because they're a very punitive lot. So, you have to understand that if you want to be free, carving out a free life wasn't ever going to come through like, corporate America and a life where you just get to, see what you say and say what you think and like actually work through problems out loud. It wasn't going to come through corporate life. It wasn't going to come through academic life. It seems like it would come through academic life, but it's just because the ones you meet in academia are of a certain kind. They're all kind of the same. And they all kind of believe in the same thing, which is why one of the reasons why, the academics don't understand Trump in a profound way, or the appeal of Trump in a profound way. And so if you really want to live a free life, and if you're young, I would totally go the e-commerce route. I would totally try to carve out a niche in e-commerce. Just get a slice of Amazon's pie. Because you're not going to be Jeff Bezos, but like you can, depending on where you live, you can get a pretty good nut, like working these algorithms and printing products on demand. So you don't have to hold resources. By the way, I'm sure chat's got a lot to say about what I'm saying right now. And I'm sure some people in chat are in the e-commerce game, but it's not a bad game to be in or to get started in, because there is a quality of building that you have to do. But it's funny because I'm building it with my friends and my kids. So my kids are learning about, how to set up this kind of business, and they're learning how to design things in Photoshop and everything. And it's good because I'm a pretty good teacher of hard things. So they'll have these skills for the rest of their life, but it's not, you can do a lot without actually kissing anyone's butt or being scared of like someone finding you. What's always kind of turned me off from most jobs is you're sucking up to people with money. Either you're sucking up to people with money in a big way, or you're always scared of ticking off your boss. And I just don't want that to be my life. And I've never wanted that to be my life. So my life is talking to you and, reading books and telling you what I think about books, and also telling you what I think about our political lay of the land, lest you make mistakes that you shouldn't make. So if you have money, if you have a ton of money, I think you try your hand at the stock market, but that's kind of like gambling. If you have a ton of money, I think the stock market is a great way to make more money. But if you don't have a ton of money, I used to say that if you don't have $30,000, don't even start a business, because it's not like you're not really going to start a business. I don't even think you need $30,000 to start a business anymore, People had said before that that was high. I just thought that they were high and they weren't really serious about starting a business. I'm saying that you actually don't need $30,000. I think you need like 4. I think you can get a good e-commerce business going, creating products on demand just by organizing wholesalers with $4,000 and like a week of time. If you're willing to spend 5, you might be able to do it in 3 days. Something you'll just have to pay people to like pay professionals to set up your Shopify store and all of that stuff. So it's kind of an interesting time to be young. I would think I'm not young, but it would be an interesting time to be young and trying to figure out a way to make money, but not kiss anybody's ass. Because like I said, with all of these avatars available, you could present yourself in pretty much everything you would need to present yourself as whatever you want to be. This is like the Wild West where people used to just like move towns and change names and become different. You could do that. Build a whole new persona. And nobody has to know anything about who you are online between the digital video and AI capacities to actually just present as human. And the fact that we've been normalized into looking at digital people who have themselves been run through filters. So like all of these kids putting filters on all their pictures have gotten us used to looking at people who look digital. And then, or even like Zoom and Skype, they have filters in them now. So we're used to looking at people who are filters, and now they have AIs who look like filtered people. They don't look like real people, but we're not used to interacting with real people. They look like filtered people. And so these AIs now look like filtered people, and then you can just kind of live an entire life as somebody else, making money as somebody else, and then live your other life as yourself. All of that without getting dirty or kissing anybody's butt. So yeah, the print on demand coupled with electronic marketing coupled with AI has created ways to make money that would just ways to be entrepreneurs, general contractors, a quality of general contractor that is that didn't exist before, right? And I say I'm not an entrepreneur of the self because I don't sell myself. I sell a product that's alienable from me. So if I were an entrepreneur myself, like Jay-Z, a hustler, that'd be one thing. But I'm talking about like selling products that are not yourselves. Selling products that are not yourself, and you can do that in a way that you couldn't before, because you can market them in a way that you couldn't before, and you could pretend to market them, be somebody like who's marketing them that you couldn't before. So there's space in this economy. Javon Dyer says, too many people lack enough agency and self-confidence to cultivate an identity consciously. They need that boss to give them meaning and self, even with the risk of unemployment looming. Yeah, I don't mind a boss telling me what to do. I don't like a boss telling me how to think. There's a kind of like, or I don't like being around scared people, and middle managers are scared of everything. And then because their job is in the middle, right? And I don't, so yeah. So I'm a fan of teaching my kids how to be entrepreneurs. Now, honestly, I told my kids their backup career is being like a law professor, and this will just be a different way. Because my kids have advantages that I didn't have. I didn't grow up with a dad, and not only did they grow up with a dad, they grow up with me as their dad. So my kids have advantages that I didn't have. So I'm putting them on the path so that their backup career is a law professor. But I want them to know how, for example, a business works, something a little bit more robust than a lemonade stand, which is why we started this kind of apparel company. And so that they never have to worry about like solving problems or making money in that way, right? And this works because I'm living in Georgia and the cost of living is pretty low, so I can experiment with how I raise kids and how I make money. But I do think that e-commerce has allowed a quality of entrepreneurship, a quality of general contracting that wasn't available in previous generations. If you appreciate what I'm doing, which I think you should, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in and kick in $5, $15, $50 a month. All right, so frankly, with the training you're giving them, they could go straight through those mentorship programs for business, finance, and tech. Those organizations love superstars and your kids fit the bill. Yeah, so I'm still worried about at some point in time, they're going to try to get my kids to do something dirty. And I'm trying to train my kids not to do dirty things for money. So I still think that I'm a little wary. I don't know. I'm so alienated from the private sector, corporate life. Like I've just never really spent serious time in it at any real level. The only level I've been at is at the bottom cleaning up stuff. And everyone I've seen who's in it is kind of like a kiss ass, and I just don't want that for my kids. And so Saadi Ali says, why law professor? Well, a law professor has a certain quality of autonomy. They seem to have a certain quality of autonomy that they can do and say what they want. And I want that for my kids. I want my kids to be free. And, you know, law schools are everywhere. And it'll keep them reading books and engaging their mind in a healthful way. And you can be non-scummy and yet still say and see what you think. So I think law professor is a fine job. Well, you don't have to be a scumbag and you can say and see what you think. I don't know. Give me another job like that. Just don't be like Amy Wax. Yeah, Amy Wax is horrible, but she's free. She's free. She's free, and I want my kids to have that kind of freedom. So yeah, that's why their backup profession, the backup is law professor. I would even think that would be better than being doctor because you don't need the hours are good, and yeah, you don't need. I don't need my kids to be doctors. Yeah, I don't think you need that kind of stress. I mean, doctors make good enough money, but I like the autonomy of being a law professor. If they're going to be doctors, maybe optometrists. You don't have to touch anybody. You get decent hours. You get to go home. You just say number one or number two. Number one and number two. And you give people glasses. Like that's a pretty ethically appropriate. Yeah, Glenn Lowry. Maybe I should do a whole show. Do you guys think I should do a show on Glenn Lowry getting booted from the Manhattan Institute? I could very much do a show on. Yeah, I will do that. I will do a show on Glenn. That's going to be my next show. Glenn Lowry getting booted from the Manhattan Institute. Thank you for Towson South, because I think that's actually a fascinating show. Like, what did that Negro know and when did he know it, right? So the idea that like he learned that, you know, the conservatives only liked him when he agreed with him. And when they didn't agree with him, they didn't appreciate his intellect and freedom. They just liked that he agreed with him. And when he stopped agreeing with them, they boot him off. My word. They didn't have the quality of integrity that he supposed. Yeah, that friendship was always contingent on you being the kind of Negro that agreed with them. And then the moment you became a Negro that didn't agree with them, they cut your check, Glenn Lowry. Now, you're an economist. I don't know. You're old enough. So either you've always been naive and other people get punished for your naivete because you spent your whole life thinking that the system worked and maybe it didn't in a way that it didn't. Or like the grift caught up with you and you zigged when you should have zagged. And now like you got to double down on your integrity because you lost your gig. So either you're naive or you've always known that you were a useful stooge, and I just don't know. I don't know. Yeah. I saw a snippet of the Bad Faith interview with Brianna. I like her. I think. I mean, we don't agree on a lot, but like I enjoy Brianna Joy Gray. I think she's a fine human. Met her at Crystal Ball's wedding. She's a fine human, and I just she's like I said. I don't agree with a lot. I don't agree with. I wouldn't say I don't agree with a lot. I think she might be changing in some ways, but there are some parts I don't agree with her on, and just like in priorities. For example, she thinks student loan debt's a more populist issue than I think it is. I think it's a fine issue, but I think the world's a better place for Brianna Joy Gray is in it, with Brianna Joy Gray in it. All right. So yeah, I'm going to do a show on Glenn Loury getting fired from the Manhattan Institute and what that means for either the racket or, I mean, what did he think the people who got canned or blacklisted for saying bad things about Israel were all just losers? And he was kind of immune to it? Or like, it's a fascinating. So yeah, Glenn Loury realizes that Israel's an apartheid state because it has apartheid-ish aspects. You got two different laws for two different people. And he says such, and he gets his rug pulled. Now, what happens if this were like 55 years ago? Would he just be quiet and go with it, or does he get radicalized? Like, he's in his 70s, been teaching forever and rich, and it took this to radicalize him to say that, hey, wait a minute, the world is not nearly as well, the system doesn't work the way I thought it should. It should appreciate my intellect and genius. Like, he might have literally been on drugs for too long. So yeah, I will do a show on what it means that Glenn Loury was booted, and what it would have meant had he figured out, had he lost his naivety 55 years ago, because he would be poorer now. His quality of naivety pays. The Coleman Hughes quality of naivety pays. So either they're all in on the grift, or they're actually that naive, but either way, it pays. And if he was in on the grift, why does he give it up now? Why can't he be like Jonathan McWhorter, who's just like, McWhorter's doesn't do the grift as well, so he's really impossible to take seriously because he doesn't even seem sincere. Like, he just comes out as the enemy. So I'm going to do my next show on Glenn Loury. Hope I've talked to you about e-commerce in a way that's fascinating. And what changes the game is print on demand. A few things change the game. Print on demand, AI, avatars, and the ability to create products, and just becoming a general contract of the self, because you can create an alienable good. Now it's just kind of about getting in the marketplace, and for business to business transactions, and kind of breaking down some of those barriers. And that's going to be kind of an antitrust show that I didn't really talk enough about, but maybe next time I'll talk more about antitrust. Peace.